I went to the pyramids of El Tajin in the state of Veracruz, Mexico, witnessed the ritual ceremony of the Voladores de Papantla, visited a self-sustainable home to connect with nature and learn more about the vanilla orchid, had the most amazing traditional Totonaca massage, ate at the famous Naku restaurant, visited the museum of Teodoro Cano, and walked the streets of this picturesque town considered Pueblo Magico of Mexico. For 300 years, Papantla was known as the city that perfumed the world and the only place in the world that could grow vanilla, and we'll get to that in a sec. So we'll start off with our accommodations first. We stayed at Hotel Tajin. We probably got the worst room there is, right beside the utility room, but I hear the rooms upstairs with a view are way nicer. The hotel is old and it shows, but if you're not picky, this will do just fine. Hot water in the shower and a clean bed. The hotel has 2 restaurants connected to it and has a nice pool area to relax in. You can see the town square from the hotel and walk right over to it in like 1 minute. Our first morning began with a ride of less than 20 minutes from the town of Papantla to the pyramids of El Tajin. After parking and being greeted by many vendors, we made our way towards the entrance. It was early and most vendors were still setting up shop. We grabbed something to drink from one of the many restaurants lined before you enter the ruins. We paid our entrance of 90 pesos and 50 pesos to record video footage. We also noticed a restaurant inside with very affordable prices. There also seemed to be a museum, but it was closed. El Tajin, meaning the City of Thunder, is truly a magnificent sight. It is believed to have been a very important ceremonial and administrative center with many buildings and many ballcourts, most of which have not been excavated yet and lie beneath the dense jungle. El Tajin has some unusual structures that are unique in all of Mesoamerica. There are a lot of questions still about the original inhabitants of this site. The more this site is excavated, the more questions rather than answers it presents. It took us 2 hours to walk these grounds. Just to imagine that the majority of the buildings remain unexcavated is mind-boggling. It is truly a site worth visiting if you are in this area. This is just 3 hours north of the port of Veracruz. As we were heading out, we began to hear the Voladores de Papantla. They perform every couple of hours. There were a lot more vendors on our way out, and we made our way across town right when school was getting out to get to the eco park Xanath, which is actually Jose Luis's home. But first, we had to make it up a very narrow and bumpy road. We came here to learn more about vanilla, and we also got to see the papan bird, which is where the name Papantla comes from. When we arrived, our host was out on his property working with his machete as he greeted us and directed us towards his open-air home. He was very welcoming and gave us a mango and some lemonade when he learned that we hadn't had anything for breakfast, and gave us some information about the vanilla orchid and the vanilla beans.
Xanath significa flor en Totonaca.
The Totonacas of this region were the first to cultivate the vanilla beans. For over 300 years, many vanilla plants were shipped to Europe and other parts of the world, but never produced the vanilla beans. They didn't know why, and it was a great mystery until the French man in 1836 was observing very closely and realized that it was due to the melipona bee. This little bee, only found in Mexico, was the one and only true pollinator of this orchid.
Esta especie.
Es color amarilla porque la flor es amarilla. Es más grande porque la planta, si ves, es más grande. Y esta abeja verde es de esta especie. ¿Ves? Porque tengo un pedacito de abeja. Es esta.
Okay.
Pero acá tengo más, así. Esta especie es de esta. Si ves, es verde. Porque la flor es verde.
Entonces, esa es una abeja.
Sí,
Yo
son
no sabía
abejas
que
para
había-
las orquídeas.
Yo no sabía que había abejas
Pero esa no
verdes.
pica.
No, hay una, no, y producen
Pero esta
miel.
no pica.
Nada. Son nomás verme, mira, estas son abejas metálicas para las orquídeas. No son
ahora sí
abejas.
que no.
Ahora, busca la abeja, la orquídea, por su aroma. La orquídea suelta un aroma que la abeja lo detecta. Entra y sale a esta copita que es el émbolo, y hace el contacto sexual a la orquídea. Porque aquí adentro está el estigma antera, sexo femenino y masculino. Entonces, el momento en que entra, hace esa polinización natural. Y empieza a crecer el fruto. Pero recuerda, son más de 100 flores para un fruto.
Para un...
No es pecoreadora, porque son abejas solitarias.
It takes about 18 months for a vanilla cutting to produce its first flowers. Flowers which only bloom for a few hours and must be pollinated at the perfect moment. If the flower is pollinated, it will take a few weeks to grow the vanilla bean, but the bean must remain on the orchid for 9 months to develop its complex vanilla flavor and fragrance that we know now. Once the vanilla beans are harvested, they need to be dried, a process that takes weeks or months.
En verde, y ya luego empiezan los beneficios. Beneficios es después de verde empiezan a secarla en petates. La ponen a solear y ya. Por eso, mira, esta foto también es muy antigua.
So that is why Papantla was called the city that perfumed the world. Can you imagine the fragrance coming from this town for those 300 years? Real vanilla is time-consuming and expensive to cultivate. Now you know why so many companies artificially flavor their products with beaver butt. Sadly, although Mexico gave vanilla to the world, it is now Madagascar who is the #1 producer of vanilla. It is now manually pollinated using this technique here. This home-turned-eco park sometimes hosts groups and workshops. Jose Luis also told us that some people pay around $10 to camp out on his property. We paid around $15 for the both of us and were able to reserve using Papan Tours. We got to see the stainless beads he has here, but we're not able to go on the nature walk as we already had our next stop scheduled. And like this, we said goodbye to El Señor Jose Luis and headed over to meet La Maestra Irma. We went for a traditional Totonaca massage that was more like a sobada. If you're Mexican, you know what I'm talking about. Going into this experience, I had no idea this great woman was going to have such an impact on me. Our time with her felt so sacred and wholesome. As she barely touched me for my massage, she was describing every pain and discomfort I have been feeling and corrected some of those issues instantly. She then led us to the Temazcal, where she began with a prayer and herbal cleansing of us. We then sat in the Temazcal for the detoxification process brought on by the hot volcanic rocks. Then she wrapped us up under thick covers and gave us the herbal tea she had prepared for us. Unknowingly, this all connected to the restaurant we wanted to have dinner at, so we headed across the street to enjoy our delicious dinner. We arrived at the restaurant right before they closed, so we missed the live music. On the weekends, they also have traditional dancers performing. Can't remember the name of this traditional drink of the area, but it is made of purple atole and horchata mixed together. Of course, we had to try the shrimp in vanilla sauce, which was fantastic. I had mole and my cousin had a seafood dish. Reservations are recommended on weekends. The service here was excellent and food was delicious. The next day, we spent our morning literally walking up and down these hilly streets. We checked out this work by Teodoro Cano and enjoyed a nice stroll in the town square that felt like a walk back in time.
El otro dice, Piale. Ese es náhuatl.
se lee como se oye, se escribe como se oye. Estamos la. Hasta luego, amigos. Bye.
Como que se antojan.
We then checked out the Museum of Teodoro Cano, which is free to visit. Teodoro Cano was an amazing indigenous Totonaca artist and sculptor from this little town. In 1945, he was discovered by Diego Rivera, who took him under his wing and helped him to get into one of the most prestigious art programs where he graduated with honors. Many of the sculptures and murals in Papantla were done by Teodoro Cano. Seeing every brush stroke of these paintings in person is a must, and you can truly appreciate the precise details in these works of art. On the lower level of the museum, they had a free workshop, but there was nobody there. Our checkout at the hotel was at noon, so we were short on time, but we had a deep conversation with the lady and gentleman who were there. She told us about her father and how in her parents' time and before, people were beaten for speaking their Totonaca language, and much of the language is being lost with new generations now, with the youth speaking less and less of their native tongue and more of them relocating to the big cities. In this fast-changing world, it is getting harder to hold on to our original roots. It is places like Papantla and El Tajin that reminds us of the rich history of our native family in Mexico and the Americas. Please share and subscribe if you enjoyed this content. We ended our trip to the friendly town of Papantla here and headed back south to El Puerto de Veracruz. Thank you for watching.